I'm going to go on to Sasha, if that's all right with you. I'm just going to
Hey,
go ahead.
let's do it.
Sasha is a she/her person from the magnificent state of Oregon. And Sasha has questions regarding Reiki as a spiritual process. Says here you're trying out Reiki. Tell us a little bit about what that means to you.
Yeah, so I actually found you guys a couple of days ago through Kenneth's TikTok, which was awesome. We had to have a little open discussion there, and I really liked how he managed the conversation. And so I'm just excited to kind of explore a little deeper. I grew up as a pastor's kid. I already mentioned prior that I have a lot of religious trauma and so I'm trying to heal without resentment. And I feel like I jumped into atheism from a place of resentment and have tried to then open myself up a little bit. And so some of what I believe are spiritual practices, which is where I think our conversation would come in, is like astrology and Reiki, which I believe are spiritual practices. And I kind of wanted to touch base on that because in atheism, I believe there is no such thing as spiritual practices. Is that correct?
Well, I think the problem comes in is how you define spiritual, because the word means a million and one things to a million different people.
Right.
And if you consider spirit, okay, how do you do it? Let's talk about it from your perspective first.
Yeah, so I view like the divine spirit as the entity of love, the spirit of love that can be encompassed and embodied in any form, animal, trees, humans. I believe that the spirit of love is what I surrender to as my God.
Okay.
So
Sasha,
in the practice, yeah, go ahead.
Let me ask you, because and I'm not needling you, but I do want to get some clarification if I could. You used in the definition of the word spiritual, you used the word spirit. And so let's try to step away from that. And I'm going to ask you, and you could say yes or no, but you said the spirit of love. Was that the word? Was that the phrase you used?
I believe tapping into the spirit of love is the spiritual practice.
Okay. So the spirit of love. Does that mean the concept of love, or do you mean a non-physical, perhaps energy-based entity that exists apart from matter or intertwines with matter, but is a separate instance of existence called love?
Okay, so I believe we're born with it, a part of us, and throughout cultural conditioning and religious indoctrination and false teachings in school, we've lost touch with that. So I think as human nature, we are defected in that sense. We've lost our intuition and our instinct when it comes to love. We're just born into trauma, unfortunately.
Okay.
So I believe tapping into that is unfortunately something that we're having to learn from outside of ourselves and bring into our being.
Well, Sasha, what I'm asking though is the concept of love, the spirit of love.
Right.
Is it? And I'm really just trying to bring it back down, not its consequences, but what is it itself? Because I believe that love exists, and I know that people say, "Oh, it's a series of chemicals." Sure, it's a bunch of chemicals and phenomenon in the brain, whatever. But I also believe that it's a concept that resonates through our psyche, our mental state, in a physical way and in a psychological way.
Right.
But I don't believe that love exists.
In a scientific dive, I believe love is a result of operating through your heart chakra as your center focus instead of operating through any other chakra point in your body. You know, I believe operating through your heart is the core for and that's in Reiki practice. They believe in order to tap into life source energy, the creational energy, you have to tap into the heart chakra.
Okay. So we're talking about chakras. Well, what is a chakra?
A chakra is an electromagnetic vortex. We have 7 of them in our body, and they are what shift and move energy all throughout our body.
Can we define energy while we're doing definitions?
Let's define energy, and then a follow up on that. Go ahead.
Energy would be the flow of, I guess, kind of the current of all of our atoms in our body. So I guess chakras would be the highways basically. And you can operate, like if you can look up so many different health conditions and they can figure out what chakra that's associated with. And usually that means there is a blockage in that area where, say, too much energy has, or, atoms or whatever had tried to shift through there. And for some reason they just got jammed. So in Eastern practices, which I believe is very spiritual, they talk about slowing your body down to allow those blocks in your body to open up so that your atoms can then start flowing in the way that they're supposed to.
Can this energy that you're describing be measured with any instruments, any scientific instruments, to your knowledge?
That's a really good question. I haven't dived on that, but I'm pretty sure I could figure out ways that it probably has throughout time. I know personally, when I work on Reiki on myself, I can literally feel balls of energy shift from one part of my body to the other. So I wouldn't imagine why they wouldn't be able to measure that in a way.
Interesting.
Would it surprise you to learn that, as far as my research has revealed to me, that Reiki energy, such as the kind that you're describing, has not been measured with any scientific instruments? Now, I could be wrong.
Says that that's what I don't know the answer to that. I can't say. I can't agree. I'm not closed-minded to that possibility.
Sure.
The studies that I've seen have shown that they've proven that Reiki practices are more effective than even a placebo effect. So there is something to that. I have studied it in some sense.
Effective for what exactly?
For healing, anxiety, physical pain, just a lot of things. It's all encompassing. So that's where I guess what I believe the Eastern method is, in order to achieve wellness, is the balance of body, mind, spirit. That in order to have a healthy spirit, you would have to balance your mind and body.
This is so interesting. I don't want to derail what you're doing, Johnny, because I think it's brilliant. I've had a lot of injuries in my life. I've been in and out of hospitals. And like I've had MRIs and CAT scans and all kinds of stuff to figure out what was wrong with my body. Never once has a doctor talked to me about my chakras or my spirit. I've never gotten out of an MRI.
That's Western medicine. That's not Eastern medicine. I mean, chakras have been around for 3,000 years, and the fact that we don't know about that is absurd.
What I'm thinking about is the fact that in what you're referring to as Western medicine, evidence-based practice is everything. So if there was some way, like for example, like I'm thinking about things in the context of the American profit-based health system. If there was some way for hospitals or pharmaceutical companies to be making money off of people's chakras, it's hard for me to believe they wouldn't be doing it, Yeah.
Well, that's the same as cannabis, though, right? They kept people from being able to grow their own medicine because they couldn't profit off of it.
Well, but like I'm wondering if
Western medicine is corrupt. We don't even have to test that, because I feel like we wouldn't be in a global mental health and drug crisis if it wasn't for Western medicine.
But Sasha, I guess what Kenneth is saying is that this is sort of evidence from greed, right? If there was anything to this, what is the motivation of Western medicine practitioners or Western medicine insurance companies or Western medicine people who profit off of the illness of others? Why wouldn't they be hiring all these Reiki masters to
there'd be a Reiki section in every hospital.
That's because they're complete. It's like putting a Christian and an atheist in a building together and saying, why don't you guys work together? I don't understand.
Well, how about this? Let's
branches of healing.
Let me ask you this. As far as the evidence that you've seen, I think you said you saw studies or you've seen research. Can you identify some of the sources for the research showing that Reiki practice can help people in a very specific, demonstrative way? What are the names of the journals?
And that's a good question. This is just my brief exploring that I've done while waiting on hold for you guys, because I've been like, hey, maybe I should look into this scientifically. This is actually why I wanted to discuss this with you guys, so then I could figure out where to look in, to figure this out. Because from my personal experience, right? Because I grew up in indoctrination. I grew up being told this is what you believe. This is why it's really hard for me to sometimes hear these people on your calls, because I hear them like begging to convince you of their beliefs, and they're tormented that you don't. And I used to be that person. And so now I'm sitting here trying to find, which I've said before, the balance of science and spirituality. I don't believe that they have to have a war. I believe creation and evolution go hand in hand. I don't believe creation in the same aspect as Christians, but I believe I was created and I've evolved. So I just don't feel like there has to be such a war between everything.
Well,
and so to me, I found. Go ahead.
Sorry, Sasha. It sounds like you may be running up against a similar roadblock when it comes to forming true conclusions as our previous caller. So, like on TikTok, you heard me all, in lives and stuff, talking a lot about like scientific skepticism and this idea of proportioning your belief to the available evidence for any given claim. And this is why I'm still hammering in on people, like every chance I get. The time to accept a claim is when you have evidence and not a moment before. And it sounds like you may be approaching some of these questions about things like spirit and energy and creation, having, and I'm not saying this is like an intentional thing, but having smuggled in a set of ideas. So I would strongly encourage you to look at methods of.
I would say I hear smuggled, but I feel like I'm trying to find an accurate translation.
Yeah, no,
everything we've been taught is translation, so I have to find the right one.
Well, and so the question is one of
the right way.
The question is one of methodology, right? I like when you were talking about the distinction between Eastern and Western medicine, there was a thing that popped up in my mind from a thing I heard from Tim Minchin. He's got this beat poem called Storm that you made me think about. But there's a part where he talks about how we have a word for alternative medicine that's been proven to work, and that word is medicine, right?
Yeah.
And everything boils down to the amount of evidence that's available. So when we talk about things like spirit and energy, even things like love, we know a lot of stuff is happening at the level of our brain. We don't have a lot of evidence that some of these things are happening somewhere external to our brains. Like love is something that, as far as I can tell, is a byproduct of things that are happening in human brains. With things like spirits, well, I know that there's something like, we would refer to as consciousness, something like the subjective experience of me being me, right? That's my consciousness. Now, I've got lots of good reasons to think that that's happening at the level of my brain. I can look at how changes to my brain and my brain chemistry alter and affect my conscious experience. I don't have reasons to think that my consciousness is something external or something that is happening other than in my brain and in my body. So when we talk about things like energy, right? So like my understanding of Reiki is very limited, and things like chakras, but this idea of manipulating and moving energy through touch, from where my brain is at, energy is just the capacity to do work, right? And I see lots of examples out there.
Reiki is literally slowing down to feel the energy, right? Like instead of just saying the words, "Oh, I know there's energy there," you can feel it.
Well, but people feel lots of things, right? So a question I ask people all the time when they talk about feeling the Holy Spirit is, how do you tell the difference between feeling the Holy Spirit and feeling the effects of something that's happening just purely at the level of your brain?
It's like when I'm doing Reiki in the mirror, right? When I'm actually shifting, and when my hands are on my head and I feel energy blocks, and I'm using my breath work and my mind to direct the energy from one block to another. There's been times where I've actually seen like my nose move over as I feel the energy block trying to move from that location, and then my nose go back to the position it was.
See, and my attitude when I hear someone say something like that is that I believe that you're telling me about an experience that you had. I know that our brains are powerful things, and I know that our capacity as for sort of leading ourselves into experiences where our experiences are not consistent with reality is well documented as human beings. So like when you say you feel an energy block, my brain is immediately going, well, how do you know that what you feel is an energy block? Like where's the attribution happening?
For me, what I can explain it to you is it feels like I can feel the, what is the word from shifting from one thing to another? Like it will feel like pulsing, and then I can feel it solidify like almost a rock. And then I can feel that rock feeling move from one energy line into another. They also have in ancient, which has been scientifically proven as well, there are Easternized scientific branches, not just Westernized beliefs. That's only scientifically proven. There are where our body has what they're called nadis, which are they're like connecting points between all of the energy lines in your body. So every now and again, sometimes if you move your shoulder and you feel this weird pop in a tendon or something, that is one of the nadi points in your body that's releasing energy that's kind of been trapped in that spot. So
I would love
Reiki things. I can feel the misfirings in my body, all these weird popping sounds from the energy points.
Sasha, I would love to hear you talk about these nadi points with a physician, because I'm wondering if there isn't an actual physiological explanation for the tension we feel, and I know there is, but you say it's been proven scientifically, Sasha.
Western.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I said Western medicine will call them nerve points, nerve endings. Eastern medicine will then call them like nadi meeting points. So it depends. I mean, I've literally gone to Westernized doctors who have no idea what I'm talking about because they have been only indoctrinated in Western teaching.
You say indoctrinated is an interesting word to use when we're talking about evidence-based practice and evidence-based study.
But Sasha, let me just ask you. Let me ask you really quick here. You said that a lot of the things you're saying, it was proven, it was scientifically proven using Eastern scientific method. What is the Eastern scientific method, and how does it differ from the Western, so-called Western scientific
methods? I said Eastern methods are scientifically proven as well.
Okay, so give me an example of what scientific experiment, what was the experimental design for proving one of these Eastern medical claims? What was it?
I mean,
maybe you don't know.
Documentation, since the word Reiki was actually founded in like 1920, that would be all of the documentation throughout time saying people have benefited from this practice compared to Westernized medicine.
Okay, so it's just reporting, self-reporting, saying that it was beneficial?
I would strongly encourage you to look at
the discovery of science.
I would strongly encourage you to look at the difference in methodologies and standards when it comes to studies being conducted by doctors versus what you will find in the realm of Reiki.
I mean, and this is also, I've had some amazing Westernized doctors, don't get me wrong, who do tap into Easternized practices. I had one emergency nurse one time who told me she was training for the Olympics, slipped on ice, landed on a point in her tailbone, and she cracked her whole spine up and got stuck on Western medicine. Her pain was like 95%, and she gave up on Western medicine, switched completely to Easternized healing practices, and she says she's at a pain level of like 2%. And that was from a Westernized doctor in a emergency room, kind of telling me like, hey, we're doing wrong.
Sasha, you're giving us anecdotal examples. What I'm asking is, what is the underlying method for proving that these so-called Eastern practices actually have an effect upon the body? And it sounds like when you say it's been proven, you're talking about it's ancient. People have reported that it works. You've known individuals who have reported that it works. But I'm saying, what's the mechanism? And I don't mean like, oh, there's energy flowing through the body. No. I need you to, we talked about this in the beginning. Can this energy, if it exists, can it be measured? If it can't be measured, how do you know that it exists? Other than there's a tradition of that this energy exists in the body. Because quite honestly, tradition doesn't really count a whole lot for me. The proof is when it can be demonstrated. So it sounds like you went from a religious environment where spirits, whatever that means, energies that can't be measured, realms that can't be accessed in this life or exists in some sort of um, non-corporeal way, and you've stepped into another world where that stuff exists as well. But we don't believe that that realm, those non-physical energies, those non-measurable energies, these chakras, these things exist.
Well,
you have to prove that they exist. Do I believe?
Have you experienced that? Have you tried acupuncture? Have you experienced? Because I believe, however you would measure the effectiveness of acupuncture, the same way you would measure the effectiveness of Reiki.
Let me give you an example that's not acupuncture, but I years ago went to a chiropractor. I had back pain, and I went to a chiropractor, and this guy popped my back and talked about sublimations, and I felt fucking great afterwards. And it wasn't until much later that I found out that chiropractic is bullshit. It is not evidence-based. It's not medicine. Sublimations don't exist. It's a racket, chiropractic. And my subjective experience of going to a chiropractor and feeling better afterward was a barrier to me acquiring actual knowledge. My subjective experience was one thing, and what's real was something separate from that. And so I want to put that on the table.
But in my experience,
and I know we're running out of time, so I just want to put one more thing on the table real quick, Sasha, which is energy. Okay, and I've been thinking about this over here because I have talked to people who will tell me about psychic energy and about ghost energy and about Reiki energy, and energy tends to be this catch-all word that people use. And in my experience, outside of a scientific context, within like the confines of physics or talking about energy in systems, it's a woo-woo kind of bullshitty term that people use to mean lots of different things. So I would encourage anybody watching and listening, when you hear energy and people talking about energy without being very, very specific and clear about what they're talking about, your bullshit detector should be going off. The red flags should be flying. So that's just one thing.
Yeah. Sasha, we have to move on. I think that we would have additional fantastic conversations with you going forward. I do encourage you to go ahead and dig up those scientific studies that we just talked about in the beginning and proving that Reiki and different kinds of stuff is real. Share it with us at the show. You can share it at, well, you know what? There's going to be information about that later, but there's an email address where you can share that information to us. Hey, I tell you what, send it to TV@atheist-community.org. That's, or heathens at atheist-community.org. Either one. Send that information, read it, send it to us. We'll take a look at it. We love getting emails and such from our viewers. But you know what? Don't let this be the last time we talk. I do want to know more. You've said a lot, but we just have to move on.